it is potentially one of the things that is preparing us to be the parents that can raise the children who will change the world. Hello, my lovely friends, and welcome to today's episode of What We Tell Our Daughters. Today, we are going to dive into the topic of fertility again, but from a slightly different lens, and that is more around the mindset and maybe some of the spiritual belief that goes into someone's fertility journey. If this resonates with you, amazing, keep listening. If this feels too woo, I'll be honest, I don't think it's that woo. I think a lot of what I'm going to talk about is going to make sense. And hopefully, you'll be able to find the threads that align with how you believe, whatever it is that you believe, and help you if you are currently in a fertility journey. But a lot of what I'm going to share with you today came from my own journey and how long it took to have our daughter, and some of the things that mentors told me along the way and things I learned. So I want to share those with you today. Today, I'm coming to you from Thailand. We're traveling again, and we'll be traveling for the next couple of months. So I will probably have a different backdrop for the next few episodes. And I apologize for missing last week. That's a give yourself a grace moment and let yourself go on vacation. And I didn't plan ahead far enough to get an episode out. So be it. It's part of my practice of letting go of the perfectionism of doing this every single week and actually practicing what I preach. So today, let's dive into our topic. I think the first thing I want to share with you is that, when you are in the throes of trying to get pregnant, struggling to get pregnant, trying to figure out what it is that isn't working or exactly what levers you need to pull, it can get very cold, hard scientific, right? Even in the doctor's office, or maybe I would say, especially in the doctor's office situation where you're getting labs done and you're having exams and you're getting imaging, and, there's all of these cold, hard truth type of facts that people are telling you. You have this many eggs, or your hormones say this, or, maybe you've been told that getting pregnant naturally is impossible at this point, which that's a whole nother story, but that's really not ever the truth, I think, most of the time, unless, of course, you've had like a hysterectomy. But I think that it can be very easy to get lost in the science and the labs and this and that and forget that there is also a mental, emotional, spiritual side of yourself that needs to be taken care of, because this is not an easy process and it can be very difficult and very, I think women go through a lot of grieving in this process. At least for me, every month that went by that I had a period and I wasn't pregnant felt like I'd lost something that I never had to begin with. But I know that that experience was very, very difficult. And I felt frustrated and lost and alone. And so I want you to know that you are none of those things, even though it feels like it. Well, I won't say that you're not frustrated, because I'm sure you are, but you are not alone. And there's lots and lots of people, for better or worse, that are going through something very similar. So there is community out there. There are women who are feeling the same as you. And there's also a lot of amazing success stories of people who've gone through this journey and come out the other side with their beautiful baby in their family. So I'm talking about this today because I think that sometimes we only address one piece of the puzzle. Maybe we think that if we just hope or pray or wish or journal or meditate hard enough, our baby will eventually come to us. Or we can go the opposite direction, where we test and we do labs and we just try so hard to get all of the physical pieces into place. And maybe you have this unknown infertility diagnosis where nobody can quite figure out why, but you're still not getting pregnant. Maybe there's a spiritual piece that needs to be addressed. And I would say that no matter where you're at in this journey, if you're just thinking about getting pregnant and you maybe even haven't even struggled with infertility at all, that doesn't mean that we can't start to address this mindset of fertility before we even get to the point where it's a necessity. Right now, it's just this opportunity to embrace. So, what I mean by the mindset of fertility is really connecting with whatever belief drives you. So for me, that was Well, I had a mentor, someone, an herbalist that was working with me when I was trying to get pregnant. And she said, can I tell you something in one of our sessions where she was trying to figure out what kind of herbs she could give me that would help balance out some of my hormones. And she said, I can see your baby. I'm calling her a she. I don't know that it's a she, but I can see this baby spirit is right on the other side. And she's been attached to you for your whole life. She chose you as her mama when you were a very, very young child, and she's been attached to you ever since. And whether or not that is true, who knows? We will never know. Maybe someday quantum physics will prove what we wish and hope we know. But for me, believing that, holding on to that thread that all of these things I was doing, all of this time that was spent wasn't for naught, that she was really there, that she was really going to come into our lives at some point, helped me immensely. And the other thing that she told me, and this herbalist didn't know a whole lot about my relationship with my husband. She knew a lot about my physical symptoms, but she said she's just waiting for her papa to be ready to. And that story, or that statement, was so true for me, that I understood that I had been ready for a very, very long time. But this leap that we were about to take was a much bigger leap for my husband than it was for me. And so it did take him much longer time to become comfortable with the idea of having to take care of a tiny human, of growing our family, of what that would look like and feel like, and how it would change our lives, for better or for worse, almost entirely for better, but still it was a change that he needed to embrace. And so the minute she said that, I felt this like sense of relief, like, oh, that feels so true for me. And it's kind of like when somebody tells you, or when you read your astrology zodiac thing, I don't even remember what it's called, your horoscope, and you're like, you know what, that is totally me. She could have said multiple things, I think, that would have felt true to me. And so my point here is that I don't necessarily believe that that was the truth. I don't know that that was the truth. But what helped me was finding something that I identified in that helped me hold on to a belief in something larger than just this moment, than in the science, than in the day to day. Holding on to the belief that there was some connection I had to this human that was yet to be, that was going to help guide me through this journey. And that can come in many different ways for people. Some people don't believe this is true at all, and that's okay. I think it can make it more difficult. I think one of the most beautiful things we can do is meditate to our children and help them hear from us, those little baby spirits, wherever they are, that we are ready, that we are welcoming them, that we want them in our lives. And maybe they'll listen and they'll hear it and they'll be like, you know what? You think you're ready, but you're really not, which I think is potentially part of the journey that my husband and I went through. And I'll tell you part of why I think that. And that's because, one, my husband's, so I eventually, after many years of testing and lots of trying, we discovered all of my hormones actually looked okay. My husband just had a really low sperm count and pretty low motility. So he ended up going on a drug called clomiphene, Clomid, which is used for both men and women. And that raised his sperm count, and we had our daughter about 3 months later. Well, the doctors, and myself included as a functional medicine practitioner, I ran so many tests on my husband, and I couldn't figure out what was contributing to his low sperm count. Was it hormones? Sort of, but not totally. Was it stress? Why was his testosterone lower than it should have been when all of these other things that I've looked at are completely in balance? And other doctors said something very similar. So it was this like kind of unexplained low testosterone, to the point where finally one of the doctors said, maybe you had a head injury at some point and your hypothalamus is actually just not talking to your gonads, basically. And it's not, your hormone pathways aren't signaling correctly because of maybe some damage to your brain. So that was the best reason we had as to why his testosterone was low. After we had our daughter, about maybe 6 months after having her, no drugs, no Clomid, no clomiphene, no natural supplements or anything like that to raise testosterone or sperm count. We got him tested again, and his testosterone was totally normal, and his sperm count was actually totally normal too. And this is, as soon as we got pregnant, he stopped taking Clomid. So it had been, what, a year and a half since he'd had any type of drug like that would interfere with his hormones. All of this is to say that I think sometimes our brain has more power than we give it, our mind, our beliefs, our thoughts, and potentially maybe there was a blockage he had. I don't know if this is true. But what I do know is that the minute I release control, I release this intense need and want to force this child into our lives. And the minute this herbalist told me, she's right there, but she's not ready. She knows that she is ready, but she knows that there's something else that needs to happen in your life, in your husband, in your life, in order for the pieces to fall into place and for her to feel like it's her time. That, when she said that, I sort of felt like, oh, I understand now. I've been basically bulldozing my way through this fertility journey. I haven't at any point just sit back and relax and said, what will be, will be. We're doing all the things we can. Let's just try and accept and ride this journey and enjoy the journey as much as we can, because we never know what will come of it. And in the meantime, we can always try to connect with this baby spirit in whatever way feels right, whether it's journaling or praying or none of those things at all, whatever feels right for you. So, all that is to say that I think that there is great value in finding a way to connect with this human that is going to come into your life in whatever form feels right to you. And maybe that is purely at the scientific level, like you can talk to your eggs and you can talk to your sperm if you want, and you can talk to the physical parts of you that you have control over if you don't feel like this baby on the other side, this spirit on the other side is if that's not doesn't fall within your belief system. That's okay. I've had two mentors tell me something similar along the lines of there's a connection with a journey and a connection with letting go that needs to happen in order for things to fall into place. And I can't tell you the countless stories I have of women who've told me they were trying and trying and trying, and they were pushing and tracking and doing all of the things and taking all of the supplements. And when they finally were just like, F it, I'm gonna just let myself relax and take, basically, what's the word? Take your foot off the gas, put your foot on the brakes for a couple of months and just relax. That happened to be the month that they got pregnant finally. I don't know if that's going to be true for you. And I don't know if this resonates with you, but I'm telling you this because I think that this is a huge, important piece of the fertility journey that we don't talk about very much or at all, especially in the Western medicine, but even in the functional medicine side. I think we're still very clinical in a lot of ways, and people are anxious or nervous to bring in the spiritual side. And I think that it can be extremely helpful. I mean, we know that when we meditate, our cortisol and our stress levels reduce. That is a physiological response that we can measure. We have scientific evidence to prove that. Well, we also know that when we lower our cortisol levels, all of our sex hormones even out as well. So even if you don't believe any of the spiritual side that there's actually a connection, you can still meditate and you can still visualize this future baby or visualize yourself pregnant and help your body go into that state, relax into that state. And ideally, you're going to help your hormones balance out along the way as well and become more optimally prepared to house a baby in your body. Or for your partner, maybe they need that as well. So I think that's one big piece of this puzzle, and something that I wish somebody had told me sooner, because I spent a good 2 years crying and crying far too often and not at all enjoying the journey, not at all feeling like I had any kind of semblance of control. And when you feel like you have no control, you hang on for dear life to every tiny bit of control you might have. And when you do that, you cause yourself excessive amounts of stress, which then become a negative feedback loop where you're hurting your hormones and you're hurting your ability to actually get pregnant, et cetera, et cetera. And if it is true that our little baby spirit is on the other side, is that really a family that they want to be born into? One where they can see that their mom is just constantly strung out and stressed because she's trying to track every little thing and she's so worried and concerned that it's not going to work? versus a parent who's saying, yes, this is hard. I'm not saying it's not hard. Yes, I'm going to cry about this because I have emotions and this has been a really long, hard journey. But I can also recognize that there is a peace in letting go, a relinquishing control that can help things fall into place. And also show your baby that you're not going to try to coerce them into this world, that you trust them to choose when the time is right for them. And I think that was another part of this journey and this piece for us was I needed to trust that my partner would be able to do what was necessary to get to the place where he was ready, and that my baby would come when she recognized that her parents were ready. And when I did that, for me, that was when everything just sort of fell into place. And I stopped feeling this constant stress, this constant anxiety, this constant worrying about the future or what my life would look like, or the potential that I would never get to be a mom, or all of these fears and things that start to run the show when we don't actively control them. When I let go of trying to control all of the things, those thoughts just kind of disappeared. So kind of comically, in trying to control everything, I was creating just this massive amount of stress for myself and this negative thought cycle that I couldn't get out of. And I don't think that I expected that when I let go, all of those negative thoughts would go away. I think I thought maybe they would even be louder, but I had to just relinquish and trust that it would be okay. And ultimately, it was better than okay, right? We got our baby girl out of it. So, um, this, I think, and I think there's another piece of this, and that is that whatever you believe, whether you have a spiritual belief or not, having the ability to consciously separate your mindset from your actions or pull back this kind of automatic response we have to daily life, which I think is what's happening when we go into that control mode. I need to fix all my hormones. I need to take all the supplements. I need to do this. I need to do that. We go into this kind of automatic response. It's almost like a trauma response where we're just trying to control every little thing. That is never going to fly with tiny children, right? We have to be able to relinquish control, to ride the waves, to have a more conscious experience of life where we're observing our actions or we're observing our thought process and we're saying, I see that my immediate reaction is that I want to do this, but I also recognize that that maybe isn't the right thing to do in this moment. So I'm going to pause and take a step back and choose a different path. And so setting in doing some of this practice now as you're preparing for a child or you're on your fertility journey, or maybe you're just starting to think about getting pregnant, this will set you up for more success as a parent than if you don't do that work beforehand. If you have no practice like this in place, I think parenthood is much harder, because I do think that, at least for me, one of the best things I can do as a parent is relinquish control and just kind of ride the wave of whatever it is that's happening, obviously with the guardrails of I need to keep my daughter safe, and I need to choose my battles. And so a lot of times choosing our battles wisely comes from being able to consciously separate ourselves from the immediate emotional reaction that we might have. So I think that this is twofold in terms of sometimes this emotional, mental, spiritual journey of fertility is actually the thing I think that pushes people over that edge of struggling, trying to success in fertility, a fertility journey and getting pregnant. And I also think that it's one of the things that sets people up for success even better, to be better parents, more conscious parents, um, more hands-on parents. And if we zoom out even further, if we look at this world we live in and we say, this has always been my belief, the world needs more strong children, right? We need more good people in this world to continue to move us down positive pathways instead of more negative pathways. And we've seen this happen throughout history. We've seen cycles and cycles. And We are evolving, we are changing, our thought process and our beliefs are changing as a collective. And I see younger generations doing more than older and in different ways. But I do strongly believe that if you are someone who has very strong beliefs about how to raise children and how to help children become the future of the world, then I think that it is one of our responsibilities to be the people who have those children, who help raise those children, who can give back to the world in a really big way. And I lost my train of thought here, but I think what I was going to say is that, um, oh, I know. So sometimes I think that this journey of infertility, although it feels like such a curse in the moment and it feels so challenging and so painful and so difficult, and I know so well how that feels, I also think it is potentially one of the things that is preparing us to be the parents that can raise the children who will change the world. And so having some of that belief as well and trying to see the other things that this difficult journey was teaching me was another way that I think I managed some of the pain. And also, I was able to learn and grow from it instead of just feeling shrunk by it in a way. I hope that all makes sense. And I know today was a little bit of a ramble, and I apologize for that. But I felt like it wasn't really helpful for me when I was trying to journal out a pathway for this podcast, because I feel like this is just one of those topics that I need to just kind of say and the journey comes out. So that is what today ended up being. If you listened all the way through, I hope that there was some thread that stuck with you, that you felt like, okay, I can take this forward and this will help me in the future. And um, I'm going to leave some journaling prompts underneath this podcast, because I also think that it can be very helpful to kind of look within. And if you're someone who's not used to journaling, or you're not really used to meditating, maybe some of the things I write beneath this will help pull out some of the thought patterns and processes and beliefs that you might find for yourself that can help you connect to something larger in this journey. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.